Lions and lionesses. Today I'm going to talk to you about something that really achievers like us don't always value. Some of you do, and I certainly do. But let me start by telling you a story. When I first met Tony Robbins, I got my first cassettes when I was 13 years old, and it changed my life dramatically. And it really set me on this path for what I do today. And when I first met him, I got invited to Fiji for a small, mini date with destiny, which, if you know what that is, that's it's his favorite and his best seminar, his best event, I think. And if you ever saw on the Netflix special, I Am Not Your Guru, that is based off of Date with Destiny. Anyway, it was a small group, and I was helping people there, and wasn't getting much sleep because we'd be in the event all day, like 12 hours. We had activities in the morning, and then at night, people were falling apart a few days in, and so I know how to do body work and improve people and help them, and so I stayed after and did it, and I was exhausted. And I couldn't afford to stay at his resort, so I had to walk. There's no cars or taxis, so I'd have to walk a couple miles to my hotel afterwards. And I remember when I was leaving, I was delusional, and I was packing. I was in my underwear, I remember, and I heard my name. I'm like, oh my God, I'm losing my mind. And then it's his brother-in-law, Scotty. And Scotty's like, hey, Tony's a little banged up. Could you come over and see him? And I had a flight. And if you miss your flight, you're going to stay there for a while. I was like, yeah, sure. It's Tony Robbins. I'll help him. I always wanted to work with Tony Robbins. So I go over there and I start asking him questions, and he doesn't drink enough water. When he trained way too hard, and he hurt himself. He did crazy stuff. He had pretty bad trainers, I would say. And then he barely slept at all. And I was in shock listening to these things, because I assumed that he really took good care of himself, but he was putting everything else before him. He was putting the mission before his own body, and he would try to catch up in other ways. He would he would sleep less, but then he would do more body work, but that's not the same thing. And so what I said, he's like, well, what program? And Sage was there, his wife, and he asked me, well, what exercises do I need to do? And I started laughing because I thought he was joking. I was like, this is a really smart man. I was like, there's no exercise you should do. Your body is in such massive debt that it can't recover from any more stress, even if it's a positive stress like exercise. Exercise has benefits for it, but worrying is stress too. And worrying, or fear-based emotion, harms the body. But if you have no way to deal with it, if you don't have the fuel, the resources, that stress can be too much. And that's why we limit all our train sessions to 30 minutes or less, right? And some days when you don't sleep, you're only doing 10 minutes, because we're making sure we don't regress. We're trying to hold our ground until we can get those resources. We're going to keep eating well. We're going to keep hydrating. We're going to stay in love-based emotional states, which are more healing, a boosted immune function. And then we're going to catch back up with sleep at some point. We got to. It's really important. And I don't want to scare the hell out of you guys. But I'm going to share some research with you, just a little bit, not a lot of it, because if I told you all of it, you'd probably be overwhelmed by it. But when Tone asked me, what exercise do I said, I was like, no, there's nothing. He was a little not disappointed. He was angry, actually. I could tell. And I'm like, I'm never going to work with this guy. And I said, well, you don't sleep enough. You don't have these resources. Well, I was just explaining. And he goes, well, I'll sleep when I die. And he said it kind of in a proud way. And I said, well, and if you've ever been to Fiji, the internet's really slow. And I'm like, well, let me show you a study that says that's going to happen about a decade earlier. And it was so awkward, because I'm trying to get my phone to work, and I wanted to show him, but at the same time I didn't know him well enough to stand there. And then Sage comes over and hugs me and says, and this whole time she was staring at me like she wanted to murder me. And I've had people that wanted to murder me before. I don't know if you ever have, but there's a very certain energy in the room. And at the time she thought I was going to hurt her husband, the man that she loves and adores, and because she thought it was going to be like all these other trainers that just obliterate him because he's Tony Robbins. He can handle it. He's superhuman. Well, no one's superhuman unless you are actually a superhuman, and I don't know if those exist. And we kind of have been conditioned from superhero movies and all these things, where one guy like Rambo beats an entire army and saves all the prisoners. That's complete horseshit. Nothing works that way. We're designed to work together, and there are no superheroes. We're superheroes when we're living in love-based emotion. But first, we got to fill our own cup, and whatever flows over, that's what we give, so we can help others. That's how we make the world a better place. But first, we got to not be selfish, but in a way selfish. You got to be intelligent. You got to fill your own cup. And then when you have these resources, then you can give, and you feel great, and you don't resent it. Because when you're really pushing and you're tired and you're trying to help people, and you're just drained, you're not in a state of appreciation, you start to have anger and resentment because you just want to sleep. Your body's telling you to sleep because it's breaking down faster than it's rebuilding. So that's just a short story. And then what happened over a period of years that, I'm with Tony all the time now. And I, little by little, I shared information with him. I introduced them to experts. And I was like, and it took a long time, probably took 4 years before he started. And I had him wear a whoop strap so that I could see his sleep, he could see his sleep. And it wasn't me judging his sleep. It wasn't him judging his sleep. It was just looking at his physiology. And that really helped him. And now he shoots for 6 hours every night and he gets more. And he really wants to get to 7. And he gets there sometimes, but that took him forever because he didn't value it. I had deep-rooted beliefs about it. His identity was caught up in this guy that's superhuman that will work all day and do whatever it takes, but I'll sleep when I die. But I want the guy to live a long time. The world needs him, If I could give my life to keep him around longer, I would totally do it. So let's just talk about sleep. And, there's a lot of research on sleep because, and I won't go too deep in this, but I just want to touch on a few things because it impacts every facet of the cell, and you are trillions of cells. So if a cell is unhealthy, you're going to be unhealthy. So anything that affects the cell affects the organism. And so there's a lot of epidemiological studies across the world, not just in certain areas, not just in America, but all over the world that show that the shorter your sleep, the shorter your duration of life. So if you average 4 hours a night, and then you start averaging 5 hours a life, you actually live longer. But the key is most people do best between 7 and 9 hours of sleep. The younger you are, the more sleep you actually need because there's more growth processes occurring. But short sleep predicts all-cause mortality, your lifespan. It's pretty important. Now, here's a really interesting study, and this is a short-term study. They had a group of healthy people and they restricted their sleep for 4 hours for just one night. And then they looked at natural killer cells, which are markers of an immune function. And just one night of 4 hours of sleep had a 70% reduction in natural killer cells in immune function. That's huge. Now, you wonder why when you're at an event, you don't sleep very much, that a lot of people get sick. It's because of these things that occur. Now, due to the link between poor sleep and various cancers, the World Health Organization has listed night shift work as a carcinogen, a cancer-causing agent. So that just shows that's the World Health Organization. Now, inadequate and poor sleep erodes and damages the very blueprint of life, your DNA, your genetic code. So if you snap your fingers, think of this, cells die and they must be replaced. But when you build a new cell, it first has to go in the nucleus of that cell and look at the blueprint, which is the DNA. And that's like the cookie cutter. Like, okay, how do we make these again? Okay, boom. Okay, let's get the proteins and let's put it all together. Let's assemble it. Let's get some water in here. Let's hydrate this. Let's add a spark of life to it. And boom, we make another cell. But if the blueprint is busted, then you're going to make faulty cells. You're going to have cells that are not healthy. That's huge. So this is a really interesting study. So they took a group of healthy adults and they limited them to 6 hours of sleep per night for 1 full week. And they previously measured them before when they were sleeping their normal amounts with between 7 and 9 hours. And so they measured gene activity. So how the genes were expressing themselves. How was the DNA being replicated in a good way or a not so good way, in a productive way or a destructive way. Now, the individuals, there were 700, let's say it like this. There were 711, there's only like 20,000 genes in the human body. So 711 that measured of these different genes were distorted. And it was caused by lack of sleep. So what I'm saying is 711 of these different genes, 711 genes is a lot of genes. And they can either be turned on or off. Some of those genes turn on good things. Some of those genes turn on bad things. But half of the genes that were turned off were associated with immune function, the good stuff. You want high immune function. This lowered immune function. It's very important. The other half of genes all increased things like this: chronic inflammation, tumor growth, stress, and cardiovascular disease. This is only one night of a little less sleep. So, for some of these people are just losing 2 hours per night. That is a huge difference. Now, sleep loss impacts every facet of your body and life. And here are just the really broad tips where you want to start. You don't want to overcomplicate these things. But and I can go deep in this, but I won't go into the physiology right now. If you do have questions on this, tell me and I will go deep on it. But if you want to avoid a couple things, these are the couple things. You want to avoid alcohol, marijuana, and medications, all sleep medications, because they are, the way Matthew Walker, the guy that wrote the book on sleep, he calls it a blunt force instrument for sleep, because blunt force means that, okay, you fell asleep, but you're not going to deep restorative sleep. So you're asleep, but you're not feeling rejuvenated. You're not eliciting the same processes that occur. Does that make sense? So that's a simple thing. Not everyone wants to hear that, because a lot of people like to drink wine and their intention is it helps them fall asleep. And it may help you fall asleep, but you won't go into deep restorative sleep where the magic happens. Now, here's the master key. The human body has its own internal clock called a circadian rhythm. When we do that lab test where you spit in the tube 4 times a day, that's what we're measuring, the circadian rhythm. We're looking at different hormones, and at certain times some hormones should be high, at other times some hormones should be low, and those impact your energy and your sleep. And that's why it's so important. And so routine is the most important thing. To go to bed at about the same time each night, and to wake up at about the same time each night. Regularity is the master key. So getting a consistent schedule. The body thrives off routine because it feels safe. When it feels safe, it's healthier. When it feels unsafe, it's in a process. The body's breaking down faster than it's repairing. That's what aging is. So first thing is go to bed and wake up about the same time each night. And people will start, the mind will kick in and start making all excuses why you can't. Well, knowing what you know now, and I could go way deeper on this, what's more important? The second thing is body temperature. A lot of people don't realize this, but in order to fall asleep and stay asleep, you need to be 2 to 3 degrees cooler in terms of your core body temperature than you are when you're awake. And so you want to keep your room and your body cool. And so the recommended temperature in the room when you go to sleep is 65 degrees Fahrenheit or 18 degrees Celsius. And that's coming from the research. So sleep is your life support system. And it's a thing where we got to reclaim our right for a good sleep without the stigma of laziness. Because as achievers, we want to be known. Our identity is, I'll do whatever it takes. But what's the real end of this? What does this look like later on? And like for me, I really make sleep a priority. And I don't care what anyone thinks, because I know what it is. I know how the human body works. And for me to let other people thoughts about me or beliefs about me dictate my own health and lifespan, well, I don't listen to anyone. I don't give a shit what people think. It's my life and I'm going to do what I want with it. And same thing with you. If you hear this and you're like, screw it, I don't care, but now you know, then fine, sleep any way you want. I'm not going to make you feel bad about it, but I just want you to know this stuff because a lot of people don't. But sleep is the Swiss Army knife of cellular health. If you want to lose body fat, you better sleep. I'm telling you right now, because it affects a hormone called ghrelin, and you will have a hell of a time controlling your eating, and it will be emotional eating. Your body will keep eating because it's like, hey, you're not sleeping. We need some other resources here, and it will store those resources later on. And so I hope this was helpful. Let me know what you think. If you want me to go deeper on this, if you want me to, if you have any specific questions, let me know. But sleep is a secret weapon that we all need. And there is no other species ever on Earth that we know of that has ever been sleep deprived. This is a whole other ball game. And it just happened in the last 100 years with industrialization when we started getting electricity. And that light at night, I can do an hour talk just on light at night. And so we don't need to go there. But for right now, tell me what you think. What is the next action step you're going to take? Tell me about your sleep. Is your sleep good? Do you have trouble falling asleep, staying asleep? What do you average at night? Do you measure your sleep like with an Aura ring or a Whoop strap or anything like that? Let me know. Let me get some feedback because I want to keep helping you with this stuff. It's really important to me and it's really important to you and the people that care about you as well. And therefore is important to me. All right, my friends. I love you. I appreciate you. I will talk to you soon. You tap into the real you, but you have to retrain yourself. The way you retrain yourself is you wake your ass up in the morning and you say, I am here for a reason and a purpose. And it's bigger than my moods. It's bigger than the difficulties of the day. I am here to live like a lion, not the fear of a lamb.